All right, let's jump right into this explainer, because today, April 29th, 2026, we are looking at a completely fascinating paradox. Anthropic's newest AI model is somehow triggering absolute global panic while at the exact same time sparking an absolute frenzy on Wall Street. It's wild, right? A technology that was literally designed from the ground up to be safe is actually terrifying the financial sector, but ironically, making investors more eager than ever before.
You know that old Silicon Valley mantra, right? Move fast and break things. It's been the playbook for years. But with the stakes being as high as they are right now, we really have to ask if that old playbook is officially dead. Because now that AI has the sheer power to threaten massive, highly complex global infrastructure, well, breaking things isn't just some quirky startup growing pain anymore. It's a systemic, global risk.
To get a handle on this massive paradigm shift, we've got to talk about Project Glasswing. That's the internal name for the highly unorthodox limited release of Anthropic's new model, which is called Mythos. It was incredibly unusual because they actually opened it up to their fierce industry competitors for critique and testing. But here's the kicker. This very rollout almost immediately suffered basic, cybersecurity 101 level breaches from unauthorized users who managed to access the model.
Section 1. The Rise of Mythos.
So, Anthropic is currently sitting on an absolutely staggering valuation of $800 billion. That makes it one of the most valuable startups on the planet. And for Project Glasswing, they invited a total who's who of tech giants to test Mythos out. We're talking Apple, Google, Amazon. They purposely allowed these fierce, direct competitors to get under the hood, look at their unreleased intellectual property and critique it, all to try and make it the best model out there.
Section 2. A new cyber threat. But that testing phase quickly triggered an alarm that reached the absolute highest levels of global finance. In a highly urgent, private meeting, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Fed Chair Jerome Powell summoned Wall Street leaders to deliver a very blunt warning. Hey, banks, better start testing this thing now before it's too late. And it wasn't just happening in the US. Central banks in Canada and the UK were practically scrambling to call companies together with the exact same fears.
And the reason central banks are so panicked really boils down to this simple, autonomous three-step loop. First, Mythos can autonomously find unpatched bugs in web browsers, iPhones, Androids, and massive financial payment services. We're talking about security holes that banks might have unknowingly been sitting on for decades. Second, it independently develops a targeted plan to exploit those bugs. And third, it can actually execute that plan to cause harm. It's literally an autonomous loop of finding and exploiting flaws without human help.
We are literally looking at a total paradigm shift. Think about it. In the past, massive cyber threats required nation-states spending years and billions of dollars to build whole armies of military hackers. Today, in the Mythos era, you have incredibly low skill requirements, autonomous execution, and instantaneous mass scale, all at an extremely cheap cost. It completely lowers the barrier to entry for common financial criminals and gangs worldwide.
Section 3. The Pentagon and Regulation.
Now, because of this danger, the ethical and legal battle lines have been drawn very clearly. Anthropic, which, remember, was founded by developers heavily prioritizing safety, is explicitly demanding guardrails against mass surveillance and flat-out refusing to allow autonomous weapons on the battlefield. They're even suing the Pentagon over a July 2025 contract. And the Pentagon's response? It's been severe. They declared Anthropic a supply chain risk, which is a rare label usually slapped on foreign adversaries. They're seeking a military blacklist, accusing the private company of meddling in defense affairs.
And this clash has caused a massive fracture right down the middle of the U.S. government. You have the Department of Defense actively seeking to blacklist the company, while the Treasury and the Trump administration are pushing to expand access to make sure the U.S. maintains global AI supremacy. It's a situation that perfectly highlights the regulatory void we're currently in. Basically, a private company made the choice to withhold its own powerful model entirely on its own simply because there was no governing body there to tell them to do it.
Section 4. Brilliant doom marketing. But here is where Wall Street suspects we might be looking at a completely genius strategy, something called doom marketing. Look at the AI IPO race right now. You had Elon Musk's xAI merging with SpaceX in June, Anthropic's highly anticipated IPO coming up in October, and OpenAI's expected offering late in the year. The theory goes that by hamstringing their own rollout and claiming the AI is too dangerous to release, Anthropic is driving up this massive, uncontrollable hype. It helps them raise unbelievable capital right before that expected October IPO. And honestly, it's working. Indexes tracking AI companies are outperforming the broader market right now, and Anthropic's underlying business strategy makes this hype even more potent. If you compare them with OpenAI, the paths are super different. OpenAI really chased that consumer market, right? ChatGPT has an unbelievable 900 million weekly users. It rivals major social networks. But Anthropic took a distinctly different route. They headed straight toward the deep pockets of enterprise customers. They are explicitly targeting the very banks, scientists, and highly lucrative corporate vendors who are currently terrified of the cyber threats Mythos represents.
Section 5. Fighting fire with fire. To really wrap our heads around the scale of the opportunity here, just think about this number, $300 billion. That is what global expenditures on cybersecurity are expected to skyrocket to by the year 2030. It is a staggering pool of capital, just waiting for a comprehensive solution.
And because enterprise banks are already pouring massive funds into internal AI tech, outside vendor contracts, and defensive cybersecurity, it creates the absolute perfect revenue stream for Anthropic. They've excelled at building tools that automate the process of writing and debugging code, which places them squarely at the center of this massive enterprise spending frenzy.
Which brings us to the core of Anthropic's pitch. They are essentially fighting fire with fire. By leaning into the idea that the exact same capabilities that make the model dangerous are what make it invaluable for fixing flaws, they're actively selling the technology that causes global havoc as the premium, necessary shield to protect our infrastructure. It's the ultimate double-edged sword, and it is perfectly monetized.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it's that there has been a fundamental shift in how we have to view artificial intelligence. You know, the era of just worrying about AI streamlining back-office jobs and displacing workers, that's kind of over. The stakes have completely changed. We are now fighting for the absolute security of our global digital pipes, our financial systems, and our national infrastructure.
So as enterprise banks rush in with completely open checkbooks to buy the very weapon that currently threatens to dismantle them, it leaves us with one really crucial question. As we plug models like Mythos into our absolute most critical global infrastructure, are we deploying our ultimate defense, or are we quietly programming our own destruction? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.